Grow, Make, Cook, and welcome to my garden. This here is the end of April, which means that the weather is starting to get truly warm and the soil is starting to warm up. So when you feel the earth, it's no longer cold, and that means it's time for things like my tomatoes, basil to get planted out, and our warm season crops can start getting sown seeds directly into the ground. I always struggle knowing when to pull out things like my rocket. I want some of this to go over and make seed, but as you can see, the entire patch of last year's rocket is now flopped. We've had a lot of heavy spring rain and it's all just collapsed over and it's covering everything else in the garden around it. So I think I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and start pulling these out. What I have here is my next tip for a budget-friendly garden, and that is to use things like toilet rolls, which I've just squished and then folded 2 ways, or egg cartons, or even the toilet rolls chopped in half. Let me just fold that so I know where half is. But having these cardboard structures, instead of buying little pots for your plants and seedlings to go into, is another great way to reduce the barriers to starting a new garden, because it can be really intimidating knowing that there are pots to buy and seeds to buy, compost if you haven't already started making your own. And so all of these barriers, we're slowly trying to find little steps to overcome. So if you have already been following along, we've looked at the sunshine and decided what we wanted to grow, and then we've positioned our garden and dug over some soil, and now we are starting seeds. So the spot that I've got is a semi-shade spot, which means that I'm going to be planting things like lettuces underneath the shade of those trees, because whilst most vegetables do want a really sunny spot, you can get away with planting a lot of leafy greens like blitva or silver beet, salads, lettuce, even some things like parsley will all tolerate a little bit of shade. So what we're going to plant in our trays today is a couple of varieties of lettuce and some parsley. The longer tubes I've got here, these ones, which are not cut, is what I'm going to use for my parsley. And this is where knowing a little bit about sort of the structure of what you're planting and what it needs really helps, because parsley has a long taproot. So I'm using the longer full toilet roll tubes to give the seeds the opportunity to send their roots down before I plant them into the garden. The other benefit of using things like these chopped up toilet rolls is that I can take the whole piece and plant the toilet roll and everything in the garden at once, and that means I'm disturbing the roots a whole lot less than if I was squeezing and popping things out of plastic containers. So I haven't folded the bottoms like I did once upon a time. I'm now leaving them blank, and I'm going to keep them in this old oven tray so that this will do the holding of the bottoms together for me for my toilet rolls, and I don't need to worry about it. It'll also mean that a little bit of water stays in the bottom of this whole tray, and that will mean that I don't have to worry so much about making sure that I get out to water these every single day. One really common mistake of first-time growers is not filling up the containers that you're starting your seeds with all the way to the top. You want the seeds to have as much soil and room for spreading their little roots out into as they can possibly get. So fill your plant pots or, you know, egg cartons or toilet rolls or yogurt pots or whatever you're using all the way to the top. Because when you water, the air will kind of get compressed out and the soil will settle down and it will give you a lip all on its own. So don't be afraid to really fill them. And my second tip for when you're sowing, especially very little seeds like these, which are lettuce seeds, is always tip a little part of the packet out into your hand first and then sow from there. Never sow the seed directly from the seed packet. Never just tip it out into your tray, because one, you're going to sow basically the majority of your packet of seed all in one place, and you're going to have no control over where and how those seeds are spaced. So you want to be able to spread those seeds thinly along the area that you're planting in. And secondly, this way you'll still have some left that you can sow another batch later on. So that one packet of seeds means that you get multiple sowings instead of just the one in the first go. As I'm going along, I'm just sprinkling a small amount, this is parsley seed now, into each of the little spots and each of the little containers. And if I get a lot of germination in each one, I'll actually pick them out so that only one or two of each of these little areas have each plant. So I sprinkle a little bit of extra seed, not too densely, but into each container, because you don't always get, like with these older seeds, you don't always get 100% germination. So having a little clump of seeds is kind of an insurance policy to ensure that at least some of them will germinate in each pot. Now, I'm really lucky that little offcuts like this come out of Mr. O's woodshop all the time, so I don't have to buy plant labels. But it's really important when you're doing a mixed tray like this to label your plants so that you know what you've planted where. The last step is just to very lightly, well, not with a big clump like that, but very lightly sprinkle a tiny bit of compost over the top, just to hold those seeds down and ensure that they're in good contact with the soil. You don't want to make this thick or heavy, because all of the seeds I've sown, the sorrel, the rocket, the lettuce, the parsley, they're all tiny. And so because I'm growing a lot of leafy things like that that are tiny, I just want the very thinnest little cover of soil on the top. Sometimes I don't even bother with that step. I'll just throw a little handful of sand or something over the top just to weight them down. And then I give them a very gentle sprinkle with my rose watering can. That's the one with the little holes in the front, just so that they are nice and gently watered in, but without getting too heavy. Then these guys are going to go into a warm, sunny and protected spot like a balcony or a terrace, just for a little while till they germinate. And that is the next step in our little garden done. But I think that's probably about all we've got time for this week. So if you like what we're doing, please like the video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And if you want notifications, use the bell icon below. And until next week then, do widzenia.